Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Bart S., Todd A. at Berkman CU 96209, Sean M., and Brian H. On the program today, we have a returning guest. Mr. Mark Chalmers is back with us on the program. Mark is the president and CEO of Energy Fuels. The company is focused on production of uranium, rare earth elements, and vanadium through various conventional mining and in-situ recovery projects, through rare earth separation processing agreements, through also potential future production of its pipeline of projects in two primary jurisdictions, United States and Australia, with other jurisdictional exposure further to projects in Madagascar and Brazil. Energy Fuels is also exposed to medical isotopes through its business of further processing mined materials, such as the extraction of radium. Energy Fuels' production efforts are centered around its White Mesa Mill complex, based in Blanding, Utah. The company is listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol UUUU and also on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol EFR. Mr. Chalmers, thank you for coming back to update.
Hey, Andrew, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, Mark, it's great to have you back on, and it's been a while since we've chatted. Of course, you guys continue to be busy despite some of the market activity out there, both in the broad market and also sentiment in some of our sub-markets. But why don't we kick it off here? I'd like to get you to you guys just released Q1 results. They came out earlier this month in May. Cover off those key items from your perspective, those results, also including, of course, the balance sheet, and then we'll dive into a few specifics.
Yeah, look, we're really pleased with our results. Really the key elements is we increased our guidance, okay, which is rare nowadays for production of uranium. So we're having really great success with increasing uranium production at low cost. We continue to have robust balance sheet, well north of 200 million of liquidity, no debt. We did have a loss because we didn't sell any uranium, because we didn't want to sell uranium at current low prices. We did have some revenue from the heavy mineral sands. We've got building inventories that we can sell uranium when we choose to. Good to see the price uranium coming up. And we also had a couple announcements on both our partnership with POSCO and Chemours. So yeah, I mean, we're going full tilt. And lastly, we made an agreement which was very significant with the Navajo Nation on transport of uranium across the Navajo Nation. So very busy time for us.
Interesting decision on the no sale of uranium. You guys, of course, are filling into some term contracts, but of course, I know you're very astute when it comes to the spot market, which we'll come back to that here towards the end. I want to discuss that a little bit with you, but an interesting move not to sell anything early here in the year, with the expectation, obviously, that we will see the price go higher. It's, of course, a little bit debatable on when, but definitely we'll see that happen, and more things yet to be filled on that front. So that's an interesting move. Great summary here, because we're going to talk about a lot of those things here. Why don't we move into uranium operations for a moment? You guys announced production results from Pinyon Plain, including the exploration program results as well, aimed to replace depletion. Talk about those results on both mining operations, but also the exploration side so far, and what you would expect for full year guidance coming out of Pinyon Plain.
We're just getting things ramped up. I mean, we talked about a record month in April. We mined and extracted out of the mine over 150,000 pounds of newly mined ore, and so that was a good month, showing that we were able to start hitting our strides on the mining side of things. We had really excellent, outstanding, unbelievable exploration result down in what we call the juniper zone, very high grades, 5 to 7% in many cases, which is really kind of mini Athabasca kind of grades. So we're really excited about that. We're just getting the flywheel going on the uranium production. We upped our guidance. I mean, we kind of gave a range of guidance for the end of this year. We're very confident we'll be in that range, and could be higher than that. But we want to be conservative in terms of how we communicate that to the market. We still have to get some more mining momentum going, but ultimately, when you start looking at the uranium, we're talking about in the order of 1 million plus pounds of finished goods available for sale at the end of this year, and that's after our contract sales currently scheduled for 220,000 pounds, and having in the order of 2 million pounds plus of total inventory, including finished goods and unprocessed material at the mill. So we'll be very strongly positioned, Andrew, with our inventories, and we can turn the unprocessed material into finished goods pretty much whenever we choose to do so. So we're in a very strong position with Pinyon Plain, the mines that we have, and the LaSalle complex, and also the treatment of alternate feed.
Mark, that's good. And I was going to ask you a little bit about Pandora LaSalle, but I think you covered sufficiently there where we stand. And then, of course, the exploration results at Pinyon Plain are good. That's obviously working towards expansion, replacement of mine material. Sounds like underground operations are going well there, and of course, inventory building there. With respect to the uranium production, it looks like you guys are going to stack this into the back end of the year. Just give the audience a flavor, Mark, if you will, as to when you decide to run that material, plus obviously some of the toll processing material that would come in as well, but all the stockpile there. Give us a rough example of if you guys did run that material, how quickly you could turn it in and sell it if conditions were there.
Yeah, well, we're planning a ore run at the mill. I mean, we've been processing uranium alternate feed earlier this year, and so I think we've got something like 700,000 pounds of inventory. They're about 750 right now, and we're planning a at least a 3-month run on some of the Pinyon Plain and the LaSalle material. It may be as much as 4 or 5 months. So when we start processing, I mean, we can turn it into finished goods in just a matter of a few weeks, and it's available for sale. So it's pretty quick. And really, when we have material on stockpiled in front of the mill, we can turn that into finished goods for about $15-$20 a pound. So it's really not a huge cost to turn it into finished goods. So right now, as I said, we're planning to run three months, maybe 4 months or longer at the end of the year. Probably can produce, in the order of 200 to 250,000 pounds per month of finished material, which is substantially more than a lot of people will produce out of even a typical ISR project. We can modulate it however we choose to modulate it, make the run longer, shorter, likely to be longer, and at cost structures, Andrew, that I think are going to just really surprise people how cost effective our conventional mines are at Energy Fuels.
I think that gives us a good flavor of how quickly you guys can turn this material on. And then, of course, yeah, Mark, we'll probably save the discussion about the U.S. uranium production. And you mentioned it earlier, a lot of overpromise, underdelivery, or overpromise and just don't deliver types of events that are occurring out there. Where you guys have been careful about this and have always used the premise that you under promise over deliver, and I think that's coming down the pipe here, and you guys continue to demonstrate that and will do so in the years ahead here. So I appreciate your comments towards that effect as well. I want to come back to the Navajo Nation. You mentioned that in the summary. You guys announced an agreement with the Navajo Nation earlier this year, also including the agencies regarding transport and mine cleanup. Talk about that agreement and what it aims to do.
Well, it was a landmark arrangement. We technically did not require an agreement because we had all the licenses to transport, but it was a very important process for us and the Navajo Nation. And working together, we came up with an agreement that puts more safeguards into the transport, even though we've never had an issue previously. We also came up with the bolt-on of assisting them with cleanup of some of these abandoned uranium projects that had nothing to do with Energy Fuels, but to help them with that. It went down really well. I mean, it went down well with the government. I don't think it went down well with some of the NGOs that have opposed this for years, because they saw us do something that was a win-win for both the Navajo Nation, indigenous communities, and the cleanup. And so it was very important and towards our social license to operate in that region. We're tickled with it for all the right reasons. And I want to say that during that whole process, the Navajo Nation was very respectful. We had multiple meetings. I think it was well over a dozen. Everybody was focused on a better outcome, and we got there. It's an important milestone for our company and for the Navajo Nation as we go forward, and really, somewhat of a partnership agreement.
Mark, I think that's good. In this day and age, obviously, it's quite more delicate. And for you, given your background, you've spent a lot of time in this region. You have a lot of networking with the Navajo Nation, just with respect that you've had to deal with the processes and the permitting and the access agreements and the community agreements and all those things. And it is a difficult process, especially in a place like the U.S. So I appreciate you guys working towards that end, as well as making those efforts at the community level to involve them in the project and make them a partner, not just get their permission, but make them a partner in the project through various means and methods. So appreciate the comments on that. The other thing you mentioned as well, we're moving into some further news here. You guys announced a further partnership with Chemours to expand rare earths processing with Energy Fuels. Any specific details there as to the additional work specifically, what that will entail, Mark? Does it expand beyond U.S. domestic towards some of the international development projects? Just talk about that.
Yeah, we've been working with Chemours very closely for 4 or 5 years now. We still are securing monazite from them. What it is we're trying to expand that relationship. We want all the monazite that they recover in Florida and Georgia. Certainly, as you're aware of, it's no secret that we've acquired a number of heavy mineral sands projects, whether it be in Brazil, Australia, or Madagascar. And those are, projects that they could have potentially an interest in. So what we're trying to do there is two U.S. companies that have infrastructure, permits, licenses, and in their case on the East Coast, where the synergies between the two companies are greater if we work together to expand that. So we're very excited about that. And as I said, we've had a long-term relationship with them. It's a good look in the United States, particularly now. So we're just exploring what some of the possibilities can be, because originally our agreement was just really focused on the monazite, and now we are a different company because we actually have acquired some world-class assets, frankly, under the nose of a number of people in the heavy mineral sand business, and they're taking notice of that.
I think this is important for the market there, that the relationship continues, it's looking to grow. And that also, as part of that exploration of different things you guys can do together, both U.S. domestic, but also expanding internationally as well. There's got to be some appetite for some of these other projects, which would relate to bringing material back into the U.S. from good sources as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. But in addition to that, you guys also announced back in March an MOU with Posco International for possible supply of rare earths to Posco for their use in manufacturing. Talk about that deal, and if you can speculate here, when we would see potentially first commercial transactions with them, should it all move forward.
Yeah, with POSCO, and POSCO, South Korean company that through a huge company in South Korea that goes all the way in through magnets and very well established, and suppliers for a number of the automobile manufacturers of magnets. What's going on there is that we took that material from the phase one run that we had early in 2024. We ship them significant quantity of material so they can test that to make sure it's suitable. They've done some initial tests and it was suitable, but they wanted some larger scale shipments. we're supposed to get some magnets back from them on that material that has been converted into a permanent magnet, and we should get some of that back. But so we're just exploring what possibilities could be on future offtake with a group like POSCO, and we're just going down a path in that regard. All these various groups now that are in this sort of the back end of the rare earth business, when you go to metals, alloys, and magnets, even into motors, they're all looking for sources non-China. And obviously, with the geopolitical tensions on China, the United States, they're even more interested than they ever have been previously. So we have POSCO that we announced. We're talking to a few others, also very keen. But I'm not prepared to speculate on the offtake, arrangements at this time, other than it's a no-brainer that people are looking for sources that are not coming through China.
These relationships, these aren't with just small companies that are not significant, Mark. These are with companies that have a very big reputation, are large players, and for them to have communications and to establish arrangements with Energy Fuels, I think speaks to your expertise and able to demonstrate what you guys are able to do as far as supply a dependable supplier coming out of the United States, and of course now internationally as well, as you guys continue to build on those projects. So I think that also is important for the market to understand that these are important deals, and while they don't immediately yield cash flows, certainly that'll be the case down the road here. So appreciate you talking about that. And with that as well, just on the domestic side of things, moving over to government support in the U.S., Mark, this one's an interesting one because I think you and I can agree quite often that government really shouldn't be involved in anything here, and they need to step aside, and to take government support is a little bit questionable with respect to why they're involved in the first place. But in effect, the government, its leaders, and to some extent, maybe some past corporate greed that has happened out there through the use of government officials, has contributed to the horrible domestic supply chain conditions today in the U.S. I think you and I can certainly agree on that. But to some effect, the government now is supporting to hopefully restore the supply chain independence within the United States, is being offered in forms of grants, contracts, and special financing. How much government support do you think the company would be able to potentially gain? And I know that's a tough question as far as awards and timeframes, but do you guys think that there's a good chance of getting substantial support from the U.S. government in various forms if it was successfully awarded some of these funding opportunities? And what would be picking up the balance as well, Mark, with respect to these initiatives as far as new construction, expansion goals, and continuing to build out Energy Fuels? To pick up that balance, do you think the ideal option would be debt? Would it be equity? Would it be a mix? Just give us your thoughts on that.
Look, we moved quickly over the last 3-4 years. We didn't focus on government support because we felt that in a number of cases, government support would slow us down. And we had the balance sheet, we had the ability to move, and even a number of companies that have gotten government support 3-4 years ago have never even been able to capitalize on it. They spent so much time trying to get it, and then some cases haven't even gone into construction on their projects. It's so very prescriptive. So when we look at how we're going forward, we're looking at private options, government options, offtake, and how that all fits together. We have a finance committee, and we already have a couple debt advisors on Toliara and on the Donald project. We're looking at all this from a holistic perspective. We're going to put together a package on whatever makes sense. Certainly, some of the non-recourse or potential for non-recourse financing with the government is attractive. There are some of these grants. I mean, you've got all these different groups, whether it's the DOD, DOE. You got some of these other banks like XM, DFC, are out there all wanting to participate in some level. So we're going to look at all those in a holistic way to make sure that, one, they don't overly slow us down. Two, they provide us with the right cost of capital and on where we're taking the company. So I think that when people think the government is supposed to solve all your problems, you got to be careful there. Certainly, I've never seen the support from the U.S. government. We're spending a lot of time in D.C. and we're getting a lot of attention in D.C. for the right reasons because we're accomplishing things. We've got plant and equipment, we got expertise, we're making product, we're securing projects globally. That's why we're getting attention from the U.S. government. But we'll figure out what makes the most sense for our company, in our capabilities going forward.
Well said, Mark. Absolutely. I think you and I share the same ideals on this as well. And, really that government support, really, if you want to even call it that, would be in the form of, hey, there's a number of agencies within the government who could use supply contracts. Let's go through that process, have some contracts awarded to supply materials, whether it's the DOD, DOE, et cetera. There's lots out there that could use some of the materials that Energy Fuels either is processing today or will be processing in the future once some of these projects are built and expanded. Mark, also, I think that any deal on the private side or government support side, whether it be in the form of grants or financing, special financing, my suspicion is this would be in the hundreds of millions of US dollars, most likely in any of these cases. If there was some awards or financing deals, either public or private, in terms of government funded or private funding, private equity comes in, if those monies were received, do you think some of the projects, some of the timelines would be accelerated? Would you see that potential? Or what's your thoughts there if you guys were able to secure what you needed and if that would happen faster with those funds?
We're open for anything that makes sense, including accelerating some of these projects. Right now, we have a bankable feasibility study for the White Mesa Mill that will be completed in the fall of this year. We plan to have an updated feasibility study to be completed on Toliara sometime this summer. The same thing for the Donald project sometime this summer or in the fall as well. So we're going to have a number of things to look at advancing or financing. And one of the plans is that, for example, the Donald project could go into construction in a couple months' time if we have the right financing, which incidentally has significant heavies in the Donald project in Australia. So not many companies are going to be able to say, well, in the next 2 months or the next 12 months, or the next 9 months or whatever, we can actually go into construction on some of these projects, depending on how we can finance those individual projects. So yeah, anything that makes sense. The magnitude of our strategy is effectively the size of Linus. We still trade as a uranium company, as you know, Andrew, but we're so much more than that, even though we are going to be the largest producer of uranium, in my opinion, in the United States for a number of years going forward, because we can walk and chew gum at the same time with these other projects.
Well said, Mark. I think some of those deliverables, continued operations, some of those cash flow, I think bottom line items, I think coming in further, I think the market will finally wake up and see, yeah, there's a lot to be had here. And so it's certainly an interesting one how the market's still treating this, but in due course, certainly good stuff on the walk and chew gum at the same time. We're seeing in the uranium sector that some of those other peer companies can't quite pull that one off. So that's good stuff there. One other follow up here. With multi government funding, whether it be Australian government, whether it be Madagascar government, if there was something pooled together where there was multi-governments involved in one or more of these projects within the same jurisdiction, of course, for example, U.S. government funding Donald in Australia or maybe in Madagascar for material supply back to the United States domestic inventory, Mark, do you see the issue there? You see any issue with maybe potentially a government or two getting involved in these projects, obviously, if the material benefited their domestic economy?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the things we're saying, I've been saying this publicly, that our strategy over the course of the next 2, 3 years, 4 years, we will have the ability to produce in the order of 10 or greater critical elements in quantities that will be between 50 to 100% of U.S. requirements. Okay, multiple critical elements, not just one element, not just uranium, not just vanadium, not just NdPr or Dy or Tb. I'm talking 10 plus critical elements, including the heavy mineral sands suite. So that is getting attention because we're already doing it, and these government groups, in Australia, in the United States, in the European Union, they want those elements, okay, and they want it to come from a completely non-China sources, was what we're putting together. So how it all comes together, that will be part of the exercise for some of our debt advisors and our finance advisors, of which we're getting significant interest globally on those fronts, because we have a story that is a magnitude greater than anybody else you'll talk to, because most companies just have one or two or three of those elements, not 10 plus.
A story in some respects, but then also backstopped by existing operations as well, and demonstration on most of those fronts in terms of uranium, vanadium, rare earths as well, separation, and of course more on that front to come. Mark, any updates on the medical isotopes business side?
We're still working on our R&D. We've got to make a research quantities of the radium 226, 228, and we haven't yet done so. We still see that there's a huge market for that, and we do see that, particularly with the ores that we have at Pinyon Plain, and particularly with the great results that we have, we're in a very unique position there. So no, we are advancing. We're doing additional lab work, and but we still have to get those saleable quantities of research and development quantities to some of these potential off-takers as well. So, I mean, when we solubilize, as I've said, the uranium or the monazite, a lot of these things go into solution, and we've got to be able to recover them. But the radium is very small quantities in the scheme of things. It's not like percents. It's ppbs and it's very low quantities, high in the perspective of other sources, but you still got to be able to capture it.
Market on that, it's a well-priced market because it's very, very niche. Just any thoughts there as far as when you guys would be able to recover those quantities, and then just on the basis that it's also having to be separated out of existing ores, any comments on the recoveries there? Are you guys, is some of this going into the tailings, or is it all being able to get out? What do we have on recoveries that you can speculate on so far?
Yeah. Well, those are all parts of this research and development process that we're going through right now. So I'm not prepared to go into details on that, but we can recover radium, and we've proven we can do that. But now it's really about the recoveries, how much can we actually recover, what's the quality and whatnot, and we're working through that right now as we speak. But we know we can recover radium because we have, and we've got to get the details on the final specifications and the recoveries. Is all work in progress.
Mark, do you think that's something that we would see news on within the next 6 to 12 months? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, it could be. I think it's in that kind of a time frame, and I think one thing for your audience is this radium thing it's a tough nut to crack, but if you crack it, it is equal or greater than the uranium business or even the rare earth business in terms of the potential for it. So if it was easy, somebody would have cracked it a long time ago. It's not, but we're in a unique position to crack it.
Good. Well, certainly looking forward to seeing the updates on that front, because it certainly can be an important piece of the business moving forward. And of course, we've seen you guys prevail so far on some of your initiatives. So looking forward to seeing what happens there. Just to wrap up here, Mark, I want to just change back over to uranium, get a few of your additional thoughts here. So any comments on the sentiment out there on the uranium side as well, that the company has continued to be opportunistic in the uranium spot market? You guys have done some selective sales in the past at great prices, but you guys recently purchased a small quantity, 50,000 pounds, but still adds to the bottom line at a good price last quarter. Any comments on sentiment and, of course, prices both on term contracting holding up and then also spot market conditions? That carry spread is closing up a bit here, but just your thoughts overall on those items.
Yeah, yeah, we bought some uranium for under $65 a pound, small amount. The spot price has started to creep up. It's between $71 and $72 a pound. Term price is still, around 80. So things seem to be kind of firming up for the looking to the future. I think, some of these under deliveries from others is going to pinch the market a bit. I mean, last year we sold uranium between a combination of contract sales and spot sales for $84 a pound, which I think is probably better than most others. A lot of people are selling uranium for in the 60s or low 60s, maybe even in the 50s. So we really don't like to sell uranium at these lower prices because I think the replacement value is higher. But we can if we want to. We certainly didn't want to be selling uranium in the mid 60s. Okay, so we made a choice to not sell uranium. As I said, we've got 750,000 pounds thereabouts of inventory right now. We've got this other mill run to happen. We've got plenty of inventory, so I'd like to see the price continuing to creep up. And again, I like north of 80, but that doesn't mean that we might not sell some below 80. But ultimately, we're just trying to get the best prices we can for our shareholders and for our cash flow.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, if you did have to sell some below that, it would be just a near-term item, not necessarily a long-term item, because I do think we're well above that down the road here. This year will be a little bit choppy, and the broad market will obviously impact the sentiment out there, but certainly the prices there probably hold up pretty dang well. And then, of course, the term market really holding up well with respect to folks being able to see that that's holding well, which obviously discussions continue to hold there and beyond. So good stuff on that front. Always good to get your opinion on things, Mark. And like I said before, if folks go back and take a look, you guys have been able to selectively make some pretty good moves that have paid off well here over the last few years on that side of things. Well, Mark, short of anything else you'd like to add, why don't we leave it there for now? And for potential investors who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization of about 1.3 billion Canadian dollars. Why should Energy Fuels be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors' portfolio at this stage?
Well, I mean, I think it's a complete unique story. We have a strong balance sheet. We do what we say we're going to do. Watch our uranium production, watch the cost of uranium production. Watch these next moves with, for example, we're trying to get certification on this Toliara project. We're going to be having these feasibility studies updated and released of several of them this year. Number of things happening on very positive fronts and the covering of these multiple critical elements. I also want to mention too that there is this new Section 232 that has gone in that Trump made an executive order on for the processing of critical elements, being imported into the United States. And you'll remember we were the leaders on the uranium 232 about 5 years ago. And we almost got there with that. So we did make a submission last week on that. So again, I think we are in the spotlight, in the limelight when it comes to providing, the opportunity for the United States government to reshore multiple critical elements to the United States of America. And meanwhile, our uranium business, I see it continuing to generate momentum, continuing to generate cash. That cash will help fund some of these other initiatives. And again, Andrew, I think that when people look at our company, we do what we say we're going to do, and we deliver, and we're delivering, and we'll continue to deliver. So I think that's the opportunity in a market that's been choppy for uranium and some of these other critical elements. We're providing a different product to invest in.
Mark, absolutely, you guys are, and we've certainly appreciated what you guys have been able to put together here. And we just see it as, of course, a longer term There's a big process here, and as the market starts to move and as you guys start to develop this out, I think the market will start to realize what's happening with the company here. So pricing for the equity today is very reasonable for folks to get involved with if they want to look and evaluate that. Of course, your comments today are very useful as part of their early evaluation. For further information, Mark, how can investors reach the company?
I mean, they can reach out to me. I mean, most people reach out to Curtis Moore, who's our VP of corporate development and marketing, and or Kim Casey, who's working for Curtis now, to get additional information. I mean, we try to update our presentation on our website pretty much every month, so that's another source of information as well. And routinely do shows like yours and other shows to keep people as updated and as informed as possible. So I would just say for people to watch this space, and I believe very strongly that we're going to surprise people with our uranium production going forward and at the low cost structures, and having that helping fund these other significant world-class projects that we secured over the last couple of years.
Mark, always good to have you on. Appreciate the update. We're looking forward to seeing more progress this year at Energy Fuels, and thanks for coming back.
My pleasure.